Hi, my name is Violetta, and now, looking back on my life, I can hardly believe that just a few months ago I was only 35, and I already went through such a difficult and painful experience as divorce, and not just any divorce, but the most painful, humiliating, and discouraging one imaginable, when not only relationships collapse, but also faith in loved ones and ideas about your own family and even the feeling of support under your feet. I know many will think, well, here is another woman complaining about her ex-husband, and perhaps somewhere deep in their souls they will flash a slight fatigue from such stories. But believe me, my story is not just disappointment in a man. It is a whole lump of betrayal, family indifference and injustice, which will unfold worse and worse before it even hints at a ray of light. I've always been a woman with a head on my shoulders. I work as a financial director in a reputable company in the city center. I have a stable income, a decent position, respect from colleagues, full social security, and confidence in the future. And it would seem that this is not enough for my family to be proud of me and support me. But as it turned out, for some people, all this is an empty phrase. My ex-husband Bruno, a man whom I once trusted completely, cheated on me many times and did not even hide this ability to deceive, as if it was something natural and almost habitual for him. And only when I caught him in the act, with irrefutable evidence, I finally decided to say to myself, enough, and filed for divorce, feeling that every extra moment next to him takes away my self-respect. My parents' reaction became a second blow for me, no less painful than Bruno's betrayal. When I called my mother and told her that it was all over, her voice on the phone was full of neither support nor sympathy, but anger and contempt. "Violetta, you're making me laugh. He earns almost everything you live on," she said coldly, as if she was talking not about my broken heart, but about some stupid whim. I almost choked with indignation because I myself earn a six-figure sum. I am a financial director. I supported the family myself, but my mother only snorted and added that Bruno told them about his small office job, and this was enough to put him above me. I wanted to scream, "Mom, do you even listen to me once?" But it would have been pointless because I knew that they never heard me, never believed in my strength, never saw in me the person I became, because for them, there was always only one golden child, my younger sister, Agatha. I remember how everything was too obvious when I was a child, when Agatha spilled juice on my laptop at the age of 7, ruining it completely. My parents bought her a new tablet the next day, explaining that she was already upset. And when I asked about my laptop, they told me that I needed to be more careful and not leave the equipment unattended. When she turned 18 and got her driver's license, she was bought a shiny new Honda. And when I got my license a little earlier, I was given my dad's old, worn-out truck, which had difficulty starting and left black smoke every time it started. When Agatha entered college with mediocre grades, my parents threw her a huge party, paying for everything down to the last penny. And when I, on the contrary, got into a top school thanks to a scholarship, they simply told me, "Well, that's good, you'll pay the rest yourself." So yes, favoritism in our family was never a secret. In the divorce, I got the apartment and Bruno got the country house, and although it seemed fair since I was the one who paid most for the apartment, my parents took it as if I had personally taken away their favorite vacation spot. "How could you give him the house?" my mother screamed into the phone, blaming me for the fact that now they would not be able to come there on weekends. Dad grumbled that he would no longer be able to sit on the terrace with a glass of wine, listening to Bruno tell funny stories, and ended with the phrase, "Thank you very much, Violetta." I suggested that they could come to my apartment, but my mother only said contemptuously, "It's not the same. There is a garden and a pool, and you only have walls and a balcony." For 2 months after the divorce, they did not invite me to family dinners even once, and only from the photos on Instagram did I find out that they were still going on, that my sister was posting pictures where everyone was sitting at the table, smiling and laughing, and the captions were always the same: family dinner. And in these 2 words, It was as if I was being erased from their lives. When, after some time, I was finally invited again, my mother, serving me mashed potatoes, said with a cold smile, "Agatha asked about your divorce. Now she's afraid to get married, looking at what you did." I couldn't resist and asked, "What did I do?" "Bruno ruined everything." But my mother just shook her head. "You're setting a bad example for your sister. She's only 27 and she doesn't need to see beautiful marriages fall apart." Agatha sat next to me, silent but her lips twitched in a slight smile, and I realized she always liked it when I found myself in the center of trouble, when I was heaped with accusations and condemnations, because then she could shine in the role of the perfect daughter, whom everyone adored. And now I was left alone after the divorce, financially independent but emotionally devastated, as if there was a huge emptiness inside me, and my parents looked at me as a monster capable of ruining my own life just because I refused to tolerate my husband's infidelity. All this seemed like some kind of madness, but at some point I suddenly began to treat what was happening differently, and for the first time in a long time, I began to breathe easier. I had my own place where I could arrange the furniture the way I wanted, where no one would pick on my every decision or turn up their nose at my wallpaper. I had a job that I really understood and felt strong in, and I had friends who didn't ask unnecessary questions, but simply stayed close and supported me in the way they knew how. My apartment became my refuge, and I caught myself thinking that for the first time in many years, I could choose dishes, curtains, or paintings just for myself, without thinking about how Bruno would grumble and claim that I had no taste. It was liberation. Bitter, but still liberation. And I felt an independence that had previously seemed unattainable to me. Of course, the divorce left scars in me, but along with the pain came a feeling of strength. I will no longer allow anyone to ruin my life behind my back. My friends turned out to be a real gift of fate. Sarah, my college roommate, would take me out to a bar or a small cozy cafe every Friday, where we would drink wine and laugh at the most ridiculous stories. My colleagues would invite me to office parties, and for the first time in years of marriage, I allowed myself to agree, dance, meet new people, and most importantly, feel that I was not alone, that there were those around me who cared about my mood and my decisions. A few months passed like this, and gradually a new date approached my horizon, my 36th birthday. I decided that this year it would be different, that I would take matters into my own hands and make the holiday the way I wanted. 2 months before the event, I called my parents. "Mom, I'm having a party at my house. Don't plan anything for that day, just come," I said, trying to sound cheerful. She mumbled something in response and hung up, and there was not a hint of joy in her voice, but I still decided to ignore it. I immediately threw myself into preparations. I ordered catering from a fancy restaurant in the city center, called close friends, invited colleagues with whom I really had good relationships. I wanted everything to be perfect. No drama, no surprises, just laughter, music, and the feeling that life was moving forward. In the process of preparation, I plucked up the courage to call Domenico, my realtor friend, the same one who once helped Bruno and me buy an apartment. "Domenico, I have savings. I'm thinking about a country house, even with a mortgage, but I can make a good down payment. I want it to be a gift to myself," I said, my heart pounding with excitement. He perked up and asked what exactly I was looking for, and I answered, "Something cozy, beautiful, a place where I can come and feel happy." A couple of weeks later, he sent me several options, and I spent the whole weekend driving around the area, looking at houses one after another. The third one turned out to be exactly what I dreamed of. Spacious, with a garden, bright and warm, in a beautiful area where the air seemed cleaner than anywhere else. I fell in love with it at first sight, and we closed the deal literally a week before my birthday. I was so happy that I could hardly contain my joyful screams. And the best part was that I didn't tell my parents and sister anything. I wanted to give the news as a surprise right at the party. And then the day came. I woke up excited, but also full of energy. The catering looked amazing. Gourmet appetizers, beautiful dishes, light desserts. My apartment sparkled clean and cozy, decorated with flowers and candles, and I kept glancing at the photos of my new home on my phone that Domenico had sent me. By 6, guests began to arrive. Sarah brought several bottles of wine, colleagues came with bouquets, laughter and animated conversations quickly filled the rooms. But time passed. By 7:30, a familiar lump of anxiety settled in my chest. My parents and Agatha were still not there. I tried to smile and talk to the guests, but inside, a thin string seemed to ring. "Where is your family?" Sarah asked, noticing that I was checking my phone again. "They will be here," I answered. But deep down, I was starting to worry even more. By 8, the party was in full swing. People were enjoying the music and the food, and I kept calling. First my mom, and immediately got a voicemail, then my dad, and the same thing, then Agatha, and still nothing. I sent them a text. "Hey, where are you?" "The party has been going on for an hour." There was no answer. I wrote again. "Mom, Dad, Agatha, please call me back. I'm starting to worry." The phone remained silent, and I felt like I was going to throw up from resentment. Finally, around 9, it vibrated, and I frantically grabbed it, hoping to hear at least something encouraging. But it was a text from my mom. "We have other plans tonight. Agatha is introducing us to her boyfriend at dinner. This is more important than your birthday." I stared at the phone screen, unable to believe what I had read, and for perhaps 5 minutes I simply sat motionless, feeling everything inside me tighten into a tight, painful knot. They had actually chosen dinner with Agatha over my birthday, the one I had warned them about 2 months in advance, so that no one could say that our plans had coincided by chance. My hands were shaking when I decided to call my sister, and hearing her irritated, "What?" After several long beeps, I barely restrained myself from breaking into a scream. "Agatha, why did you arrange dinner today?" "It's my birthday," I said, trying to sound firm, although everything inside was seething. In response, I heard her laugh, real, loud, with that same mocking note that I had known since childhood. "Well, that's just the way it is. I'm sorry," she said, and every word had that cold, mocking tone she'd used throughout our lives when she wanted to show that she enjoyed hurting me. "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" I asked, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Violetta," she said. "Just don't cry or you'll ruin your makeup," and then hung up. I was left holding the phone as if I'd been punched in the stomach, unable to believe that this was actually happening. A minute later, another message came through, and a photo appeared on the screen. Agatha, a man I'd never seen before, and my parents at a table in an expensive restaurant, all 4 of them beaming and raising their glasses as if they were celebrating something special, and it felt like the ground was slipping out from under my feet. I wanted to scream, smash my phone against the wall, or hide in my bedroom and cry until the morning. But I remembered that my living room was a house full of people who had come specifically to me for my celebration. I took a deep breath, hid my phone, and went back to my guests. "Is everything okay?" Lorenzo, my colleague, asked cautiously, handing me a glass. "Yes, just a little family stuff. They can't come," I answered, and no one asked any more questions, and for this tact I was grateful. Sarah raised her glass and said, "Well, it's their loss." "Happy birthday, Violetta." The guests supported her, we drank, and I felt the heaviness in my chest recede a little. At least I had people who really cared about me, and that's when I decided to share my secret. "Guys, I have news," I said, and the room fell silent. "I bought a house." There were gasps and questions, and I pulled out my phone to show the photos Domenico had sent. "Oh my God, this is amazing," Sarah marveled. "And the pool," Lorenzo added. "You should throw a housewarming party there." The other guests echoed him, and for the first time that evening I felt pure joy because these people were genuinely happy for me, celebrating my success rather than making me feel guilty. The party lasted until almost midnight, and when everyone was getting ready to leave, they all helped me clean up, and this thoughtful gesture warmed me in a way that no words could. As the last door closed behind the guests, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, thinking about everything that had happened. My family had deliberately ignored my birthday. Agatha had arranged a dinner on this day specifically to hurt me, and my parents had not even found the time to simply call and congratulate me. But I had something they did not expect, something that was supposed to change everything. I opened Instagram, uploaded photos of my new house, and wrote, "The best gift to yourself. Love yourself." I knew that Mom, Dad, and Agatha were following me, and I knew that sooner or later they would see this post. With this feeling, I went to bed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt content, even looking forward to tomorrow. Sure enough, on Saturday morning, I was woken up by my phone vibrating nonstop. The screen was littered with missed calls: Mom, Dad, Agatha, and then Mom, Dad again. I opened the messages. "Mom, what kind of house is this? Where did you get the money? Call me now." "Dad, Violetta, we need to talk. What's going on?" "Agatha, is this true? You bought the house? Why didn't you tell us?" I turned on the coffee maker, poured myself a cup, and sat by the window, deciding not to answer. For the first time in my life, I had something that they cared about more than anything else, and they could wait, just as I had waited for years for their attention. On Sunday morning, I sat in the kitchen in my pajamas, sipping coffee and lazily reading the news on my phone. The sunlight softly spilled into my apartment, and in that silence, I felt a real peace. But suddenly, there was a knock on the door, sharp, insistent, aggressive, from which my cup rattled on the saucer. I went up to the peephole and froze. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Agatha, and all three looked angry, almost furious. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, as if preparing for a scene where all the roles had long been assigned, and, smiling slightly to myself, turned the key in the lock and opened the door. "Well, well, well, look who decided to look in," I said deliberately calmly, although my heart was pounding wildly. They squeezed past me without waiting for an invitation, as if they owned the place, and their heavy steps echoed loudly on my wooden floor. Mom immediately started looking around the room, as if checking if it was clean enough and worthy of her eyes. Dad stood in the middle of the living room, hands on hips, like a judge preparing to pass sentence, and Agatha, without asking a word, plopped down on the sofa and stretched out her legs, as if it were her own house. "Violetta, what the hell is going on?" Dad shouted, his face turning red, as it always did when he was close to hysteria. "You bought a house and didn't even tell us about it? That's completely irresponsible behavior." I stood quietly, leaning against the kitchen table, arms crossed over my chest, and answered in a cold voice, "I was going to tell you everything at my birthday party. The one you didn't come to." There was silence in the room for a few seconds, and I noticed how my words hit the mark. Mom glanced at Dad, Dad looked down at his shoes, and Agatha suddenly began to look at her own manicure with great interest, as if she hadn't heard a word. About 10 seconds of this awkward pause passed, and Mom was the first to find her voice again, which rang out with sharp, piercing notes, the same ones that always appeared in her when she felt defeated. "With your salary, you can't afford such a house. Where did you get the money? Did you take out some kind of ridiculous loan? Are you up to your ears in debt?" I couldn't help but laughed loudly, throwing my head back, because the absurdity of her words sounded so pitiful. "If you ever listened to me, Mom," I said, wiping away the tears that had come from laughter, "you would know that I earn a great salary. I am the financial director of a large company, and I have enough money to afford this house. But you never listen to me, even when I've tried dozens of times to explain to you what I do and how much I earn." Mom opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, clearly having no idea about my real life, and in that moment I realized how alien we had become. But what my father said next made my blood run cold. "You must give this house to Agatha," he said calmly, as if he were discussing the most reasonable thing in the world. I stared at him in complete shock. "What did you just say?" I asked, hoping I had misheard. but my father held my gaze and repeated firmly, "You heard me. Agatha needs this house more than you do." I looked at all three of them, expecting them to laugh, that this was a ridiculous joke, but no, there was not a trace of a smile on their faces. They were completely serious. Mom even nodded, as if this was the most logical and fair option. "We talked about this last night," she added. "You already have an apartment. And when Agatha gets married, she will have nowhere to live." "Marry?" I asked, not believing my ears. Agatha rose from the sofa and with a triumphant expression on her face said, "Yes, Derek and I are getting married soon. The wedding is in 6 months, and we need a place to live." "So you think I should just give you my house?" I said slowly, barely containing my anger. "That makes sense," my father interjected, as if putting an end to it. I looked at them and felt everything boiling inside. "You're all crazy," I finally said firmly. "Get out of my apartment immediately." They froze in complete bewilderment, as if they were expecting me to say, "Of course, Agatha, take the house. That's what I was trying for." Mom threw up her hands. "Violetta, don't be selfish." But I had already screamed, "Out! Everyone out!" I started pushing them toward the door. My father tried to explain something else, but I didn't listen. I pushed them out step by step. "You are simply incredible people," I said, slamming the door in their faces, "and I don't want any of you in my life anymore." I locked the door, leaned my back against the door, and heard them arguing in the hallway for a few minutes, their voices merging into an unpleasant hum. But then everything went quiet. I thought that was the end, that they had realized the absurdity of their demands and would leave me alone. But I was wrong. A few days later, the phone rang again. It was Aunt Susan, her voice deliberately gentle. "Violet, dear, I think you are being unfair to Agatha." I hung up without saying a word. Then Uncle Bob called. "Your mother said that you refused to share the new house with your sister. That is not like you." I cut him off too. Then Cousin Christina's name appeared on the screen. "Come on, Violet. Agatha is getting married. Can't you help her?" And again, beeps. I realized that my mother had managed to call all the relatives, tell them her heart-rending tale about how I was hurting my poor little sister, and now they were calling one after another, convincing me to be kind. The calls did not stop for several days, and each new number on the screen was like a new needle stuck into my patience. But the worst thing was not that they called me and sent their intermediaries in the form of cousins and uncles, but what Agatha did on social networks. She posted a photo in which her face was covered in tears. Her eyelashes were stuck together from mascara. Her lips were trembling, and all this was accompanied by the caption, "When your own sister refuses to help you just because she envies your happiness. She is divorced, and I am getting married. Some people just can't stand the joy of others." The comments under the post were cruel, as if the crowd had decided to arrange a public execution. Our relatives and old acquaintances vied with each other to write words of comfort to Agatha, assuring her that she was a poor thing, that they were so sorry that she had such a terrible sister. Even people I barely remembered allowed themselves to insult me, calling me selfish, heartless, envious, a woman who did not want to see others happy. I did not respond because what was the point? 2 weeks had passed since that very scene in my apartment, and I decided that it was time to leave all this dirt behind and get on with my life. I organized a housewarming party in my country house, the very one that I bought for myself as a gift, and invited only those who really cared about me, friends, colleagues, and those few relatives who did not reproach me and demand that I give everything I had acquired to my younger sister. I devoted the week before the holiday to shopping, choosing furniture, textiles, paintings, candles, and little things that gave the house coziness and individuality. When everything was ready, I looked at the result with such pride as if I had built these walls and laid the tiles on the roof myself. The party was scheduled for Saturday, and I hired a caterer again, ordered drinks and snacks, planned the music, and even set up a long table in the garden for everyone to gather together. Around 2 in the afternoon, guests began to arrive, and each one, upon entering, said with admiration, "Violetta, what a wonderful house. You deserve this happiness so much." They hugged me, brought gifts and flowers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt surrounded by genuine support. Everything was going perfectly until, at about 4 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. I went to answer it, not suspecting anything bad, and saw my parents standing at the threshold. "Surprise," my mother said in a deliberately happy tone, and before I could respond, they walked past me into the house as if they had been invited. "Hello, everyone," my mother announced loudly, turning to my friends. "I'm Violetta's mother." My guests looked at each other, and I noticed bewilderment in their eyes. They knew that my parents had ignored my birthday. Mom continued to play the role of a caring mother, walking around the room, shaking hands, smiling, and introducing herself to everyone. Then she came to the center of the living room and said so loudly that everyone could hear, "I am so proud of my daughter, and my father and I are sure that she will allow us to move into this wonderful house because we decided to give our house to Agatha for the wedding." Silence reigned in the room, thick and tense, as if the air had become viscous. I stood for a second, collecting my thoughts, then smiled and said just as loudly, "Actually, no. You will not live in my house." Mom's face lengthened, her lips trembled. "Violetta, let's discuss this in private," she said through clenched teeth. "No, we won't," I said firmly and walked to the door, throwing it wide open. "You need to leave right now." Dad stepped toward me and said in a booming voice, "I'm not going anywhere." "This is ridiculous." "Then I'll call the police," I said calmly, taking out my phone and starting to dial. Only then did they turn around and walk toward the exit. As they were getting into the car, Dad shouted, "You're an ungrateful daughter." I slammed the door and turned to the guests who were all looking at me with sympathy and support. "Sorry, guys," I said, "let's get back to our party." And we did. My friends toasted my courage, told me they were proud of me for finally standing up for myself, and we spent the rest of the day happily, filling the house with laughter and music. 6 months have passed since then, and I still haven't said a single word to my parents. These were the most calm and peaceful 6 months of my entire adult life. I learned about Agatha's wedding only from social networks. The photos looked luxurious, the dress was magnificent, the reception was expensive. But of course no one invited me, and I would not have gone anyway. After that, I deleted them all from my friends so as not to see any more fake posts about a happy family. From the rare conversations that reached me, I learned that Agatha and her husband rent a tiny one-room apartment on the other side of the city, and, judging by the rumors, it is not nearly as cozy as she dreamed. Cousin Christina called me 2 months ago and again tried to put pressure. "They live in cramped quarters, Violetta, if you allowed them to use your house." I cut off the call mid-sentence. Now I have learned to hang up quickly and without regret. My parents still live in their house, the one they were supposedly going to give to Agatha. And of course, they did nothing of the sort once they realized I wouldn't let them move into mine. I've heard them still complaining about me to anyone who will listen. Aunt Susan, who thankfully supports me, told me they make me out to be an ungrateful daughter who has money and possessions but doesn't want to help her own family. "They make you out to be some kind of monster," she told me a month ago. I just nodded and changed the subject. The funny thing about this whole story is that they never mention the real reason. Not that they ignored my birthday, not that they demanded that Agatha give up my house, not that they tried to move in with me without my consent. They just made up a story about a heartless, selfish woman who abandoned her loving family for no reason. But I don't care anymore, and I don't try to find explanations anymore, because frankly, I really don't know why I should go back to the past because my life has become so calm and joyful without all this endless family drama. I fell in love with my country house. It has become a real fortress for me, and a place where I can be myself, without fear of judgment or reproach. Every weekend I go there. Sometimes I invite friends to sit together on the terrace or by the pool, and sometimes I stay alone and enjoy the silence. I hear only the singing of birds and the rustling of leaves. The area around the pool turned out exactly as I always imagined it. Sun loungers, neat flower beds, soft light from the lanterns in the evenings. And next to it is my vegetable garden, where I lovingly grow herbs and vegetables, and each new sprout reminds me that I can create life around me with my own hands. I even got a dog, a golden retriever named Charlie, and he has become not just a pet for me, but a best friend, a faithful companion who greets me with a joyful bark and brings an endless feeling of warmth. At work, too, everything is going better than ever. I got a promotion that my boss had been hinting at for a long time, and now I earn even more. It's funny, but it turned out that when you live without constant stress and pressure from your family, when you don't waste your energy on other people's claims, work goes much better, and I cope with my responsibilities with pleasure. Tom appeared in my life, and we've been together for 3 months now. He's an architect, and most importantly, he's a genuinely decent and trustworthy person. When I first told him about my family situation, he didn't try to convince me to fix things or not hold a grudge. He looked me in the eye and said, "You're great at setting boundaries." Toxic people don't get a break just because they're related. It was so nice to hear that. It was the first time a man hadn't tried to justify the people who hurt me, but acknowledged my right to defend myself. Tom loves my country house, and last weekend he helped me install new lighting in the kitchen. We're not in a rush, but he makes me feel like an equal, not like I have to give anything to anyone. My true friends have been my rock all this time. Sarah throws monthly pool parties at my house, co-workers come over for barbecues, and I organize book club meetings, birthday parties, and even recently threw a baby shower for a friend. The house lives, it is loved, and this brings me great satisfaction, because I have always dreamed that the space I created would become a place of joy and warmth for kindred spirits. Sometimes, in moments of rare loneliness, I wonder if I should try to make peace with my family. Such thoughts especially come when someone I know, with the best of intentions, says the phrase, "Well, family is the most important thing." But as soon as I begin to delve into this, I remember my birthday, their demands to give Agatha my house. I remember how my mother tried to tell my friends that she and my father were moving in with me without even asking my consent. I remember Agatha's fake tears on social networks and calls from relatives who besieged me, as if I had to explain something. And then I think, why do I need people who never apologized, never admitted that they hurt me, and always just expected me to give in and give them what they wanted? I spent 35 years trying to earn their approval. I studied, built a career, tried to be reliable, to live a decent life. But all this time, they looked at me as a secondary character compared to Agatha, who never worked, lived with her parents until she was 28, threw tantrums when something didn't go her way, and in the end, always got her way. For a long time, I thought that the problem was in me, that I was not good enough, successful enough, worthy of love. But now I understand. The problem was not in me. They do not value work, independence, and responsibility. They value only the one who screams the loudest and demands the most. They were never proud that I bought the house myself. They were angry that I had what they wanted. And now I can see clearly, no, I don't miss them. I don't miss their criticism, their manipulation, their guilt, their constant drama. I miss the idea of family, loving, supportive, real. But I never had that. I had people who saw me as a resource, not as a daughter or a sister. Charlie just brought me his tennis ball, which means it's time to take him for an evening walk around our yard. The sunset from my deck looks incredible. The sky is painted in pink and gold hues, and the air is filled with calm. Tom is coming over tonight, and we will grill fish together, then watch a movie and laugh like teenagers. This is my life now. Quiet, calm, filled with people who truly love me and respect my decisions. I have a beautiful house that I bought myself, a job where I am successful, friends who come not for handouts, but because they feel good around me. I don't need those who remember me only when they need something. I don't need parents who divide their children into favorites and unloved ones and expect me to put up with it forever. I have everything I need, and what I don't have, I don't need at all. And you know what? For the first time in many years, I can say it out loud. I am truly happy.